Hey everyone, it's Jeff Epps, and we are going to code our microbits. To begin, we need to go to the microbit website, which is microbit.org, and we can go to that in our browser and click on Let's Code up at the top, and we're going to scroll down and click Let's Code under Make Code Editor. This will get us to the Make Code introduction screen. We are now ready to start coding. Hello. In this lesson, we are going to create a water sensor with our microbit. So let's get started. Let's click on New Project. And to begin, we have to take a look at the wiring of our water sensor to our microbit. And as you can see here, we have the microbit on the left and the connections for the water sensor on the right. And we have alligator clips that look just like the connections that will go to our water sensor. So the yellow connection is the actual connection that reads the temperature from the sensor. The red alligator clip actually powers the sensor because the microbit can send out 3 volts, and then the black cable is the ground. So make sure that you wire your microbit properly to your water sensor. So let's start coding. We're going to start with the forever block, and we will need to create a variable called moisture. So let's click on variables, click on make a variable, and type in moisture, and click OK. As always, we have the moisture variable, the set block, and the change moisture block, which allows us to change the value of the variable. So let's drag the set moisture to 0 block up under forever. We now need to read input coming from our pins. And remember, on our microbit, the sensor was connected to pin 0. So let's click on the down arrow next to advanced, and we want to click on pins. Let's select the analog read pin 0 block and snap it into the 0 field. So we're going to set the moisture variable to the value read through pin 0 on our microbit, which is basically our water sensor, water temperature sensor. We also need to drag in a show LED block. So let's click on basic, drag show LEDs, and we want to turn on the LEDs so that they look or create the letter W for water. And we can see that show up in our microbit on the left. Next, we want to set up a function so that when the A button is pressed, it will show the temperature reading from the microbit. That's reading the temperature from the temperature sensor. So let's click on Input and select On button pressed A. We then need to click on Basic and bring in the Show Number block and drag it under On button A pressed. And once again, we'll click on Pins and drag in the analog read pin 0 and snap it into the 0 space. All right, so we're now going to show the actual temperature reading when we press the A button. So if we, in our simulator, if we press the A button, it should show a 0 because this is simulated, but we can see the functionality does work. Finally, we need to create the logic that tests the moisture to see if the temperature sensor is reading too wet or too dry. We're going to use the input block on button A press, and we're going to change the A to B. We then need a logic block, if then. So let's drag it under the on button B pressed. And we need a comparison block. So let's go back to logic, select the comparison block, and drag it into the true field. Let's now select our variables block and select the variable moisture because we're going to compare the moisture. And we're going to select greater than or equal to, and we're going to set that to 100. And now we want to go to the basic block, select show string, and the string we want to show is wet. So if the moisture is greater than or equal to 100, the microbit will display the word wet. We now need to create one more logic block. So let's click on Logic and select the if-then conditional block. Drag it under. We need a condition or comparison block. Drag that under true so that it snaps. Once again, we want to compare the variable moisture. So let's click on variable, moisture, and drag it into the first 0 position. And this time, we're going to compare moisture to see if it is less than 100. And finally, we need the show string block. And if the moisture is less than 100, we will display the word dry. And if we use our simulator and press the B button, notice the simulator shows dry. because this is a simulator. The microbit is not actually sensing any temperature. You can also play with these numbers to adjust them accordingly. There's always an offline lesson available by clicking on JavaScript, and you can have your students compare and contrast the JavaScript to the block code. This is Jeff Epps. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Get a life, nerd.